right. Hello, everyone. This will be a quick demonstration of octoplant and its main functionalities. And what I am focusing on is showing the main things that are used in octoplant, or the things that are used the most in octoplant. So I'll just quickly share the screen here. There we go. A quick overview of the functionality. I have 2 slides here. So octoplant has 3 main functionalities. The first one is version control, and that's illustrated, the principle here in with a blue background. So we have our server, a file server where octoplant is installed, and a clients on different machines. This could be a machine that is a terminal server that many people log into, a virtual machine, or it could be individual laptops. It doesn't really matter. It can be installed on any given Windows machine. And the idea is that on our file server, we have our different files, PLC projects, documents. We copy, paste from our file server to our client. We do our work on those files here, the PLC project files. And once we're finished, we make a new version and check it back in. And the system keeps check on who did what, when, and how. So that's the gist of version control. And the next main part is automatic backups. So down here, we have our assets in our manufacturing. Mainly PLCs are typically used. And the server or agents, which I'll get back to in a minute, can communicate with the devices if they are supported and take backups from them. And the server compares the versions we're working on the clients with what's actually inside the equipment in the manufacturing and keeps track of if there are any differences. So down here we have a very simple illustration of the networking, but the principle stands. On the right we have our equipment, the PLCs and stuff like that, which the server can communicate to, or agent machines can communicate to. And when a backup job is running, the agent gets the backup, or the server does. And in the case of it, if it's an agent, it uploads the data from the equipment, it compares it, and it just sends the results back to the server. So in a way, it offloads the burden from the server, or it can be necessary to do this due to network restrictions. And the client, of course, has a communication to the server for the version control part. And down here at the bottom, we have an example of if there are equipment that is not available on the network. It could be old equipment, or it could be for some other reason. It is possible to have clients that can connect manually, maybe a USB to Ethernet adapter if it's older equipment, do a backup job on the laptop, and then later we can put it into the network manually again and synchronize the results to the server in a similar way that an agent would do. So it's possible to connect to equipment in different ways, depending on the requirements in the organization. So when you install octoplant, this demo environment here shows the 4 main clients, the user client and easy client. These are for version control. The administration client is for settings, and the backup job settings are also in here. And then there's a report client and the hub, which are for reporting and checking who did what, when, and why. There are the library client and the backup client and some other different additional things, which I will not go into in this demo here. So let's start with the user client. I already have it open. It's right here. and it looks like this. So on the left side, we have our project tree, where it is based on the folder on my machine, which you can see at the top. So this is the client archive, files on my client machine. And it has the folder structure within the demo, and it's easy to make your own folder structure. You can right-click, new directory, just like in Windows Explorer. The difference being that if we, for this line 2, for example, we can make a line 3. So new directory, line 3. The options are available here in the middle, the main screen. I can make another new directory, or I can make a new component. And a component is also a folder in Windows, but octoplant knows, depending on what type of component it is, what to compare on. So for example, if I made a Microsoft Excel component, it would expect that it is Excel files that are inside this component here. If I made a Siemens TIA portal component, it would only compare the TIA portal files within that folder. And these components, if we, it gets a bit technical, but we can see the details here, component type details. Just in short, without going too much into it, here we see what files are we comparing. And down here for backup jobs, what files are we saving? So we are saving all the files available to us, but we are only comparing these types of files when we compare the files. This can be customized if needed, if there are need for special files in, yeah. So creating a new component right here, we have the options available to us. The idea is that we open it in File Explorer. So it goes through here from the CA, we see the line 3 in Excel, just like I've defined up here. I copy paste the Excel file from another place, put in the system here, make my first version and check into the server. Then it's inside the octoplant system. And for getting started and putting components in, this is a possibility to do it manually, but there is also tools to use Excel and CSV imports and mapping it that way as well, if it's larger. If there's many files that needs to be put in at once, but we always suggest to get started small and then build from there. So here we have an Excel file from the demo. If we look at the main window here, we have our status window, which basically shows what is the version on my local machine, so inside this client archive, and what is the version on the server, which could be in another place. We also have jobs running for this Excel file, so the results of those are there. So last time the job ran, the backup that it took is actually different from the server version 4, which is the latest version. But the backup and the previous backup it took is the same. So I'll get back to this later, what that means. But in short, we have our component Excel file. We have our version history. I could right-click 3, for example, compare with the version 2. So here we have version 2, here we have version 3, and I can see what the changes are. More interestingly, if it's a PLC project, if we take this, the 7 project, and I have 5 versions, I can compare 5 with 4 and see that there are actually some instructions added in version 5 that were not there in version 4. Also some contents different in the simple table, so it's very easy to see what has been changed. And also which change request it was made by on some additional comments. The workflow in octoplant, the user client, is these 4 buttons up here. So we check out, we copy from our server, we open with our editor. Then when we are finished with our work, we create a new version and we check back into the server. So it's like a universal workflow for version control. I don't have semantic program on my machine, so I'll demonstrate with the Excel file. So it's already checked out. I can open with my editor. I see it's already open actually. I can do some change. So just continue this, save and close. And it has registered that there's been a change. The reason or how it does this is that when we copy files out from the server, it copies a file we can work on. It's called the working directory, but it also copies an extra file, which is a copy of the version, and it continuously compares these 2 files. So when I change something in my working directory, by comparing it to the other file, it knows that it's different. So once it's different, we are allowed to make a new version, which is the next step. And here I can see before committing to the new version what the changes are. So I added this line here. I can write to row 31. This is a demonstration. And if needed, it could be multiple files. It could be different aspects of the files. If it's a PLC, for example, we can give additional details on the specific properties. And I can, from here, create a local version. Now I have a version file on my machine, but the server version is still version 4. So the last step would be to check in. And it's here from the left to right. So these are the files I am checking into the server. It could be multiple files. It could be entire folders. There we go. So that's the basic workflow of version control. We have our project tree, which we build over time. When we come into the system, we check the files out we need. By clicking on it, we can check maybe the server version is newer than what's available locally. Then we, of course, start with checking out. So we have the latest version, do our work, create new version, and check in. There's actually the easy client, which is the other client for version control. And that is basically the same thing, but the main window only has the universal workflow. So check out, find my projects. If it's the Siemens, for example, I would check out. I do the editing when I'm finished, create new version, and then check back in again. So for day-to-day use, this is much easier to work with compared to the user client, but the user client has a lot more functionalities that can accommodate different user scenarios if needed. So examples of that would be if we click on checkout again, we have some options. So the easy client, it just checks out with the default settings, but the user clients, I can log for other users. I can do a supplier checkout, which basically means I save to a directory outside the client archive. And this can be sent to suppliers that don't use octoplant. They would have a way to, they would have the files, they can do the changes, save, and send it back to me. And once I have it, I can use the smart import from supplier projects to make the next version in octoplant. And there are other tools. So free compare. This is just if I want to compare 2 files on my system. Doesn't have to be in the octoplant system. So we can utilize the comparison engines in octoplant for general purposes with free compare. And a bunch of other options, which I'll not get into right now. But the gist is that the user client has many options. The easy client has focus on the universal workflow, which is 95% of what's being used in version control in octoplant. Right. Then let's talk a bit about the jobs. So for the Excel file again, let me find this one in this demo environment. We have the change history as we saw, the tab, but we also have the jobs tab. So these are configured in the admin client, which I'll look at in a minute. But now 3 jobs has been running, and we can see the dates on it. I ran one today, earlier today. And since I have been making new versions, and the job actually looks at a specific directory on my machine, there is a difference here. And to show an example, or later I will show an example of a PLC job in our own environment. But for now, we can go to, so this is the version control part. We can take a look at the admin client. So here, there are the different settings in octoplant. I will go over jobs and very shortly, quickly, component type editor and user management. So the job window looks like this. So again, we have our project tree on the left. This time we have the server archive. So we're looking into the file server. So only the things that have been checked in are available here. And the way it works is that I can select our files and I can drag and drop inside here. And on the right, I configure the job. And the top part here is universal for all jobs. How do we get our data? What upload type is it? Since it's an Excel file, it's just a local directory from this example. If it was a PLC project, back to the S7, for example, here there's an example, we would have to define a IP address and a path for the PLC project, the location of the rack and slot, stuff like that. So continuing on this PLC, we upload from a 7 type of PLC, we run it on a schedule, and it's at 1 a.m. every night. And if there is any, let's see, differences or errors in the job, we notify our maintenance department by email. And I can also write additional emails here. Down here, we have save and upload and compare policies. So by default, we only save backups if it's different from the previous one, up to a amount of 5 backups. So it will roll over the oldest one once we reach number 6. And this can, of course, be changed. And it's a question of how large is our file server, and how large are the files that are being saved, and how long does it take to do a backup, and some considerations for that. If it's something we want a long backup history of, we can set this to, of course, a higher number. But if it's not really needed to have backups a lot of days, or depending on how it's scheduled a lot of years back, it could be set lower. But the default is 5. Then from here, we have job-specific comparisons. So for a S7 PLC, it looks like this. We choose the path, which it gets from the project, the IP address, and we can define, based on our blocks, from a given number to another number, the range, which to exclude in our backup. And while this excludes what we are backing up, we can also exclude blocks in our comparison. So we don't get a different alarm. Even though we want to save everything, we don't want to have a different notification for specific blocks. So that's what the job-specific comparison comes in. And on our other system here, just a second. This is just an example of a tier portal project for the version control part, where it can also look like this when changes have been made. And for the jobs, we have our example on a tier portal project here, where it is running at night, just like the other one at 1 a.m. There's no notifications, but it is running with an agent. So my machine here is called 006, a development machine, but I have tier portal installed on a development machine 011. And it is also that machine that has access to the PLC in the network. So this machine connects to the PLC, it uploads the data to the agent, and only the results get sent back to 006, which is the file server machine. And in tier portal, it usually gets all the information from the project itself, but it is possible to define the IP address manually if needed. And there are also comparison configuration in a similar way in tier portal. So the principle is the same for all PLCs in this regard. But from job information and below, it can look a bit different depending on what types of assets you are using. All right. So that was jobs. That is as you configure it, test it, and let it run and get notifications. And if there are new PLCs in the plant, then you add for them those as well if needed. Then we have the component type editor. A little bit about what we talked about before. So if I choose a file here, let's say SPS, we have, for example, S7. This one looks at just S7 and a random number or a simple file for comparison, but saves everything by default. But the other options are actually separated by new rows of file types. So S7 and WinCC also looks at MCP files for comparisons with a WinCC comparator. And this can be customized if needed for different purposes. So if there are any files that needs to be version controlled and compared, it can be added here. You can add new components and define your own folder structure here as well. And yeah, there are also edit labels here. So these labels can be edited. Maybe it could be, for example, order number, something like that. And whenever we make a component, we can define data for these labels in the user client. Finally, we have user management. And here it is possible to, it's very similar like in Windows. We have our groups, administrators, for example, and users within that. And we can configure here up in synchronization. We can configure to our Active Directory and get our Windows users down. And also get the groups that they are part of in octoplant. And the way the permissions in the user management works is that, let's say I have the administrators group selected in the project tree. Administrators, of course, can see everything. Let's choose maintenance. So the maintenance group can only read these folders right here. And I can also actually say that the maintenance can only read this folder. So when they log into the user client or the easy client, the contents of these folders is the only thing that are available to them. And the next is being able to edit and create. So edit means making new versions and checking in. Create means creating new components to the project tree. And delete, of course, is to delete things from the file structure. So in this way, we can get different groups from our Active Directory in Windows, and based on the groups, give different permissions to what people are able to see and work with here in the user management. There are also group roles, where we can also limit what kind of options in the admin client that the specific group have access to. So maintenance can only see jobs, but not really configure anything else. Administrators, of course, being able to do everything. Right. That is pretty much the main parts of octoplant in day-to-day use. For scripting, just shortly speaking about it, it's a event-based scripting. So before or after checking out, making a new version, running a job, we can call different scripts that does specific things. So typical use cases are if it's old equipment, then maybe you would have to zip or unzip files before and after checking out. Sometimes if there are multiple editors of a program, but you have to define access by a parameter or something like that. So think different shortcuts to the same program. A scripting solution could also work with that. And in the global settings, we have different settings available to us that, of course, apply to everyone. And the main things I would show here is for components and setting a minimum length of text when creating and deleting versions. And of course, whether we enable being able to delete at all. So this ensures that whenever someone does a new version, that they have to write a comment. So we know, have at least some context to what's going on. Finally, we have our report client, which I have right here. So the report client works like we have a period of time up here on the left. So I chose basically a very long period. And the way it works that here on the right, we select, for example, for check-in, check-out, backups, the different scenarios that can happen. So we have 480 successful check-ins, this many successful check-outs. And for backup jobs, I can click on this. This is the Excel example we saw earlier. This one is different. These one are the same. And for the components, we can see who did what and get an overview, and also sort by the project tree. In case we're only interested in specific parts of the project tree, we can see the history of what has been going on in the report client here. The octoplant hub, oh, I actually have it right here open, is similar to the report client. It's web-based, running on local network, not connected to the internet, but it has a good overview of what's going on as well. So what components do we have in our system? What is the status of jobs? We have 57 differences. We can click on the different colors, 12 errors, for example, see which components these apply for, and troubleshoot from there and get a good overview. We can also run running jobs. This one takes a little bit of time. See how long the jobs take over time. So basically, when we run jobs, we are getting data from the PLC. We are comparing. And if we run, let's say, 10 jobs at the same time, it runs sequentially. So of course, while the first one is running, the other 9 are waiting. So how long are we actually waiting? And depending on the duration and performance of our jobs, as we scale up, it might be necessary to add more agent machines to split up the work, so to say. So the queues are shorter and the workload is balanced out more evenly if we experience that waiting gets too long. We also have an overview of which clients are are used in octoplant, details on the machines, users, and down here at the bottom, it's possible to select files that are, if it's not really supported or you're unsure, you can select it here, and it would show you how to design the component type for that given project files, or the folder structure. So to summarize, user client and easy client for version control, admin client for backups and settings in general, report client and octoplant hub for reporting. And of course, as a part of that, there are also, let me move this a little bit. It's also possible to get information on different assets and compare to CVE databases. This is in a ProHub. And the way it works that when we take the backups, the information we get gets compared to international databases of vulnerabilities. So I can click on this component right here, for example. I get sent directly to a link where it is marked as high risk. And then have this overview and decide from here if I'm going to do something about it, and when and why and how. All right, that's pretty much it. Thank you.